How did your family get to England?
12 years.
I share the indignation and the frustration of my honourable friend at
4:37 a.m, October 12th, 2025. A quiet dawn that should have passed unnoticed until Dover's Channel radar lit up with a cluster of 12 fast-moving blips. Within 60 minutes, the Coast Guard confirmed what those dots meant. 1,142 people heading straight for British waters, the largest single-day crossing ever logged. And by first light, the tally since January had reached 62,742 arrivals, with 12 bodies already pulled from capsized rafts. The sea carried only mist, yet the air felt crowded, the drone of engines, the faint cries of children wrapped in metallic blankets. By mid-morning, the world had the pictures. Overloaded dinghies, ankles submerged, lifeboats buzzing around them like frantic bees around a failing hive. In Parliament Square, the first brutal headline rolled across the screens: Britain at breaking point. Energy bills had spiked 19% overnight. Hospital queues stretched beyond 12 hours, and despite it all, Westminster had poured $4.2 billion into housing migrants across 43 converted hotels. At noon, rainfall met a growing crowd outside Parliament. Their voices weren't laced with hate, only fatigue. One cardboard sign summed it up: "We waited for fairness and got invoices." The sea had never felt so close, nor the nation so split. That same afternoon, the Prime Minister appeared behind the black door of number 10, announcing Britain remains a land of compassion. But compassion, he didn't say, now came with a price tag. Behind him, aides shifted, gripping briefing folders stacked with red deficits and blue justifications. Across the Channel, the French Interior Ministry warned of 3,800 more people massing near Calais, the next surge forming beneath low clouds. "It's not migration anymore," one British officer muttered. "It's a procession." That evening in Manchester, Prince William slipped into a repurposed community hall serving as a refugee shelter. No press, no address. He greeted volunteers, stood beside families sleeping across plastic chairs, and left as quietly as he arrived. Cameras outside caught only the outline of his back, an image that would soon ignite a national reckoning. By dawn the next day, another 240 people were pulled from a sinking raft, among them a boy still clutching a drenched Sudanese passport. In Kent, fishermen hauled up empty fuel canisters instead of fish. Councils pleaded for support. Stats flooded the broadcast: 27 boats in one day to 1,400 arrivals in 48 hours. Thousands unaccounted for, but numbers couldn't capture the widening fault line. Compassion versus survival, empathy versus exhaustion. Veterans along coastal pubs spoke low of betrayal. "We defended this island once," one said. "Now we can't even afford to heat our homes." By Wednesday, the crisis had a price: $4.2 billion a year. Britain's conscience on invoice. A leaked Treasury document revealed $2.9 billion had been quietly siphoned from the national housing budget to sustain emergency migrant contracts. In Liverpool, protesters raised signs reading "Homes for heroes, not hotels for policies." In Westminster, the Prime Minister repeated the same line. The situation was under control, but the footage flooding every screen said otherwise. Overflowing processing centres, nurses striking outside emergency rooms, pensioners choosing between heat and dinner. And while politicians delivered speeches about compassion, Prince William offered none. Instead, he appeared at Portsmouth docks, greeting a lifeboat crew returning from a rescue. He placed a hand on an officer's shoulder, exchanged a quiet moment, and walked away without comment. That still frame spread faster than any policy announcement. By Thursday, his silence had become a message of his own. Newspapers across the spectrum ran the same photograph: William facing the Channel, back turned to the cameras. The Guardian called it leadership without noise. The Telegraph labelled him the listener. CNN aired it under a conscience watching the tide. Overnight, polls flipped. Trust in the government fell below 30%, Confidence in the monarchy climbed to 72%, the highest in 20 years. Analysts dubbed it the William shift. Meanwhile, in Dover, tempers rose. A protest that began with about 20 locals swelled to nearly 2,000 people. Pensioners, dock workers, nurses, veterans, walking not in anger but in shared strain. Their chant cut through political lines. Help those who come, but help those who are here. As the sun sank, candles lined the promenade. A priest lifted a megaphone and delivered a line that would echo nationwide. Compassion without balance becomes cruelty by neglect. Saturday brought tragedy. A small inflatable carrying 23 people ruptured mid-crossing. 14 survived. The youngest was 9. The next morning, Prince William visited the Coast Guard station that had tried to save them. He set a single white lily on the water and stood in silence as the tide reached his boots. By afternoon, the photograph, his head bowed, horizon washed in pale light, spread across the internet, reaching 38 million views in 12 hours. The Times titled it, "The Prince Who Didn't Look Away." Sky News called it a royal mirror held to political decay. One commentator wrote, "In a week of noise, his silence spoke loudest." By Sunday morning, the public mood had transformed. This was no longer about border numbers or patrol boats. Something deeper had surfaced. The Channel wasn't just water anymore. It was a mirror reflecting what Britain had become. That afternoon, Buckingham Palace released a brief 15-second message signed simply, "Duty without empathy is hollow. Empathy without duty is chaos." It named no one, but its aim was unmistakable. Across the UK, church bells rang out. Cathedrals from Cardiff to York projected William's image beside the words, "Leadership is listening." Parish halls opened their doors to veterans and refugees alike. Small gestures, a hot meal, a blanket, a steady hand began stitching together what politics had fractured. Inside Parliament, disorder only worsened. 2 ministers stepped down, citing ethical exhaustion. Leaked documents revealed warnings that migrant response spending could top $6 billion a year by 2027. The opposition demanded answers. The Prime Minister called for unity, but unity cannot be commanded. It has to be earned. Outside, veterans stood guard at the gates. Nurses passed out soup. Someone pinned a printout of William's photo to a fence. 3 handwritten words beneath it. "Leadership is service." As night settled, crowds sang "God Save the King" beneath the fog-shrouded clock tower. The voices weren't angry anymore. They were wistful. By Monday, donations to veterans' charities had surged past £5.1 million in a single week. And still, another 1,200 migrants landed along the Kent shoreline. Britain felt torn between compassion and frustration, mercy and fatigue. Through it all, Prince William stayed silent. In Sheffield, he visited a children's ward, laying a wreath for a nurse who had died during a night shift. Cameras caught only a brief nod. That image became the day's leading headline. BBC called it "The Week Britain Remembered Decency." The Independent wrote, "When politics shouted, the Crown whispered." By midweek, Westminster looked like a collapsing stage set. More than 40 MPs submitted no confidence letters. Polls showed the government sliding by double digits, but beyond the noise, something deeper had shifted. Across cities, murals appeared overnight. William staring across the channel beside the phrase, "All lives deserve safe harbours." In Dover, an old sailor placed a faded flag on the pier and murmured, "Maybe this is what leadership is, standing still when everything else shakes." On Friday, fog drifted across the Thames. At Chelsea Hospital, veterans gathered for remembrance. William arrived without fanfare, carrying 2 wreaths, one for soldiers lost in war, another for migrants lost at sea. The card on the second read, "Every soul deserves safe passage." When the photo was released, it swept through social feeds. 70 million views in a day. For the first time in years, Britain stopped shouting. It started listening. Commentators called it a national pause. Economists still argued. Politicians still blamed tides and traffickers. But beneath it all, a truth took root. Leadership isn't the loudest voice, but the calmest conscience. Inside Downing Street, lights burned deep into the night as new policy drafts piled up. Outside, candles drifted down the Thames, tiny flames on black water. An elderly man on Westminster Bridge watched them glide by and whispered, "Maybe we stopped looking in the mirror before pointing across the sea. History won't remember every statistic, how many crossed, how many drowned, how many billions vanished. But it will remember this: the week Britain looked inward and saw itself reflected in the tide, because sometimes silence, when anchored in purpose, can move a nation." Stay with us, subscribe to UK Watchdog, because while others hide the tide, we show it breaking.